Well, hello and welcome to Zwift Coaching Podcast episode 21. Matt Rowe here with The Weapon, Coach Hendy. How you doing, Greg?
Hey mate, yeah, good to be back. No, it's let's get in and start having a bit of a chat about this Zwift racing. Kev, what do you know?
What do I know? Well, I know it's very hard, but also know it's very effective as well in terms of training. So, yeah, let's have a chat about it and work out how we can use it to our advantage.
Absolutely, and we all know, Zwift racing is a thing of the future. I mean, it's esports at its finest. I think there's definitely a huge future for Zwift racing. You may have seen a version of it at an event near you, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will see in a live event soon. It's awesome fun. But to kick off, I think we should just look at the different types of Zwift racing, so the different formats. I think we're all familiar with kind of the standard type of race where you're in the pen and the barrier goes up and it's full gas for a couple of minutes. But you've also got some slightly newer formats such as the hill climbs, the pursuits, and interestingly the handicaps. So what's your favourite format of Zwift racing, guys?
I would have to say it'd be something that ends with some kind of sprint. It's it's shock horror. I don't like getting dropped by 3 or 4 minutes up every single climb. No, but it's I like there's quite a few tactics still involved with those those flat shorter races. It's the bunch just absolutely flies along at 50 odd k's an hour. It's super hard to get away, so you've got to be quite clever about when you use all the energy, when you decide to attack, and even actually when you want to open up the sprint, because there's so many little tricks of the trade that can really help someone just finish off that final sprint with the right energy boost or the right power up at the right time. There's it's pretty open racing.
Yeah, look, for me, I really enjoyed the handicap racing. Coming from Australia, where much of our road racing is handicap racing, where different grades, A, B, C and D, start at different times, with A chasing B, B chasing C and C chasing D, obviously. It really brings another element to racing where you want to do the best for your group, for your handicap, but you also want to save energy and save yourself for the finale of the race too. So there's a lot of tactics there involved, and also you want to make sure that you do get to the front of the race at some point as well. So for me, I really enjoy the handicap racing on Zwift, and it's fantastic to see they've brought what is a popular style of road racing in the real world into the virtual world as well. Yeah,
I think the handicap's a quality, and as you're saying there, it's kind of the tactics are huge because you start off obviously in the aim of the game is look after your teammates because you need them to share the workload, but then your teammates suddenly become your competitors when you make the catch. So again, tactics really, really tricky there. How do you kind of go about balancing that, kind of judging and pacing your effort and how much you contribute to the group? Any tips for that tactically, guys?
It really depends. Well, this is where it is like racing outdoors in the real world. It's the same tactics you'll see indoors, where in a handicap race, in your grade, in your group, it'll be the same people on the front doing turns, dragging the bunch along, and it'll be the same people sitting on the back, saving themselves for the sprint, saving their legs. It's just like in real world racing. It's the same tactics cross over into virtual racing as well.
Yeah, and just to look at the pursuits, I think they're a pretty cool format of racing, and I've certainly used the pursuits as a prescribed training tool for riders that I coach, kind of back-to-back pursuit racing, because I think on the weekend sometimes they're spaced out by about 20 minutes, half an hour. So you can go in and do a 2 or 3K pursuit, flat-out effort, and then have 20 minutes to recover and go again. But I think that's a really cool format of racing. It's more like some track racing. I guess it's more in the realms of a very short scratch race you may have at a track league. And that type of thing. So I think the pursuits are pretty cool. And the hill climbs, I've never actually done one of the hill climbs, purely because I don't think I'd fare very well, and I don't like getting my butt handed to me. Similar reasons to you, I guess, Greg. But we all know the format of the standard races. The longer 20, 30k, even sometimes bit longer. The standard races where you're in your categories A, B, C, D, or E, and the race starts, and we all know what that super hard first couple of minutes feels like. Any tips for kind of coping with that super fast start? I mean, first, obviously, you as soon as the banner or the race starts, you can't be sat at 0 watts, right? You got to wind up slightly before the race starts.
Yeah, that's the trick. I think it's once that countdown starts going 3, 2, 1, you definitely start accelerating and not quite a maximal sprint. I don't ever take off 100%, but a good 85, 90% of your max, just to make sure, and then you can sort of judge it after about 10 seconds. You can judge whether you're going fast enough or you've gone a little bit too hard. Because if you don't take off quick enough, once that bunch forms, they get that slipstream effect. They get they roll together, and you struggle so much to get across. I mean, I've missed the back a couple of times. Either I've turned up late to the race or for whatever reason. And honestly, to get across, it's just a 3-second gap. But to bridge that 3-second gap, it's 650 watts to get there. Once you're there, you're fine. You're in the slipstream, and it's all fun and games. But don't miss the back.
Yeah, there's a definite trade-off there where we always talk about pacing ourselves in racing, but in a Zwift race, it really is worth going deep at the start to hold onto the wheel, stay in that bunch. And like you said, Greg, if you miss that group, instead of having a 2-minute hard effort, you're going to have a 15-minute chase to get back on. So it's worthwhile going deep to stay in the group to begin with.
And that's the difference you find with the handicap races and also those hill climb races, is the start's actually a little bit more relaxed. So, I can see where they have their sort of place as well, because sometimes there are people that really, really struggle with that 1 minute 90-second really high peak power. Obviously the time trial type guys and girls. And your climbers, obviously, as well, that are going to line up in the hill climb races, because that first 2 minutes is actually quite violent, and it is a lot of power. And if you do miss the back, unfortunately that's your race. If you're not a very, very powerful bike rider, your chances of coming back are very slim.
Yeah, and this is something that Jordan Rapp at Zwift, who's kind of in the Zwift events management team, he was saying that this is one thing that Zwift are trying to, or looking at rethinking, because as it stands, the start is just overly critical. I think they've experimented with controlled rollouts and things in the past, but never really kind of quite got it right. So I think it's something they're looking at. But again, it's if that really explosive start is not for you, then just do one of the other types of races. And I think, as we're saying, handicaps is a great one to have a stab at. So in terms of training for these types of events, these super hard Zwift races, saying they're great training tools, but for some people they are races, and these make up a rider's season, and that gives them their competitive kick. So I've got a little session actually that you can give a go, and it's a very varied session with plenty of spiked sweet spot, plus a few ramps and sprints. And with a training session, with training in general, you can break your training down to focus on one single attribute, using periodization and the like, as we've often spoke about. Or as with my session here, it's a bit, I'm kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it in a way, kind of just replicating that racing environment. So there's kind of a couple of five zone 5 1 minute efforts, followed by a chunk of zone 3, finishing with a ramp, just to kind of replicate some of the kind of power profiles that you get in Zwift racing. So it's pretty random. It's a whole range of efforts. You're going to hit all of your zones. It may look a bit messy, but hopefully when you complete the session, it will feel fairly similar to that of a Zwift race. So give it a go. It's obviously attached to this podcast. Let us know what you think. And something new that's come into Zwift recently is a double draft. I think it's basically to try and further align Zwift to what it's like riding outside. And I don't know about you guys, but as it stands, the drafting game I think is fantastic. And as you get closer to a rider in front, obviously on screen, you get that 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meter countdown. And this is one thing we asked Zwift, what difference does, as you get kind of closer to the wheel in front, what difference does that make? And the response we got was as simple as, it's as you would experience in real life. So the closer you get to the wheel, it does get easier. But again, kind of the science and the algorithms behind it, that black box I think is a closely guarded secret.
And just on that too, Matt, from the racing and looking at the data in the results, we can also look at how efficient and tactically astute a rider is as well. In the Zwift Academy just recently, part of that was actually racing as well, and what we were doing afterwards was looking at the data, and it wasn't the person that won the race didn't always have the highest average power or the highest watts per kilogram. And so we were able to actually see if they were drafting effectively, if they were doing too much work or not enough work, and so on. So you can actually tell a lot about a rider from the results as well. And you talk about the drafting aspect. Just like in the real world, being able to draft effectively indoors has its advantages as well.
I find it a little bit different where on the game I've learnt to almost, almost predict when to, you almost accelerate maybe a second or so before you actually want to get on the wheel or something. It's quite hard to explain, but you actually have to find the smoothest way in which to stay in contention and to stay in the shelter, because there are ways where, if you look on screen and then you accelerate, you can actually be, 5 meters out the back of the bunch. So you've got to actually anticipate it, which isn't actually, in fairness, that different to the real world too. You don't just wait till the wheel goes past you and then accelerate to get on it. You're always looking around, making sure where the wheel is, and then accelerating as the wheel comes up to you. So it's just, I guess, maybe if I'm looking at the front view, I don't get that 360 degree view to look behind me to see where the wheel is. But yeah, like I said, in fairness, it is actually, you do accelerate before the wheel comes to you, so you can actually save those as much energy as possible when you're not doing those little 1-2 meter chases.
That's just like as you're saying, Greg, just like in the real world. I mean, as soon as you stamp on the pedals, you don't suddenly gain 8 kilometers in speed. Obviously, it is that ramp up. So just like in game. I think that's just to touch upon these sprint finishes, which is obviously where you're gonna win your races. I think even more so now with double draft in some races. The days of kind of solo breakaways and maybe a 2-up breakaway, it's a lot harder as it is in real life to kind of win solo now. So chances are you're gonna have to sprint. What's the best power up, would you say, for a sprint finish?
Got to be that aero helmet, mate. That one there's the fastest. I mean, it's unbelievable. You chuck that on about 300 meters out, and then it's amazing how much speed you can get. And if you push it too early, I've done that before too, and you've got a nice big lead, and then all of a sudden someone pushes his button and he comes past you like you're tied to a blooming lamppost, mate. You get your helmet sucked off.
Absolutely. And I think the key you said there is chuck it on with 300 meters to go. So if we're saying you may start your sprint ordinarily 200 meters to go, but you want to get that aero boost on well before that. So 400 meters to go. I think hit your boost, because it does last quite a long time, good 20 seconds or so. So probably hit that 400 meters to go, 300 meters to go, and probably wind your sprint up a little bit earlier, I think, in game than you might in the real world. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. It's because you're not actually coming in 100% full gas too. You've got to, and then of course there's always the acceleration. It takes a while in game to register the power. So it's always probably 3 or 4 pedal strokes before it's 100% acknowledging the power you're putting out. So I definitely open the sprint a little earlier than what I normally would, especially if I've got the aerodynamic, the draft boost there.
And this is the fun aspect of Zwift racing too, where it's bringing that computer gaming to indoor racing, where you might have a power up, and the big question is, do I use it to try and stay with the bunch, or do I try and save it and work harder and save it for the finish of the race? It just brings another element to indoor racing, which is that fun computer aspect, that gaming aspect of it.
That is so true. I mean, I've done it before where I'm really struggling on a little kicker, and I've got a little feather. I'm thinking, do I use this feather now just to stay with the group? And I've done it both ways. Where once I thought, no, I'm going to save my my boost for the finish, and I've got dropped. I was thinking, what a bad mistake. What a bad judgment call there. Yeah, should have used it.
And the other trick, I think, is, when you're doing laps, and every lap you get a new power up. You see the whole bunch just before if they're not happy with the power up they've got, you see that all the guys pushing their power up just before they go through the bell. Before they go through the lap, because you get a new one, and they're hoping that they get a good one the next time. So, and then as soon as they get the power up they want, especially on a flat course, you see they don't change it again. Like, okay, I've got the one I want. This is the one that I can use to win the race with, and they don't change again.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, I think the aero boost is probably the best. Since it's the best power up for a flat finish, and when you're on the laps, if 2 laps to go, you've got an aero boost. You definitely see riders not using that boost for the last 3 laps and just holding on to that aero boost because they don't want to risk using it and then picking up a small bonus or a feather for that flat finish where it's not really that advantageous. So it's a bit of judgment call, tactics, bit of luck obviously involved there as you kind of everyone's making their tactical decisions.
And Matt, we spoke about training for Zwift racing earlier, but from my side of things, I would really recommend that people use the racing as part of their training. It really does provide a really good variety of unstructured, high-intensity efforts. And as you said with your session, it really is a bit of a mixed bag there, and that's what racing is. So what better way to replicate that than by doing racing? So if you haven't tried it, in your weekly training program, throw a racing once a week and give yourself an unstructured, high-intensity session. You never know what's coming up. It gives a bit of fun, a bit of variety to the week as well. So a good way to change things up.
For sure. I think it's for motivation. Maybe you're coming home from work, and the thought of going out training, just jump on Zwift. Don't even look at the companion app until you get on Zwift. And then just choose the next race, whatever it may be. It could be a handicap, could be a pursuit, could be anything. And as you mentioned, Kev, that kind of unstructured structure is real smart, real motivating way to get fit, to train, and don't think of it as just training randomly. This is this Zwift racing has a place in a structured training program. It doesn't all have to be really, really precise zones and power. Sometimes just going for it. No, it's like doing a chain gang, your local group ride. You're not really sure how fast it's going to go and for how long. It's just random sometimes. So I think as we're all agreeing, Zwift racing has a place for everyone, even the pros. I mean, look, when my brother's home, and even when he's not home, and my wife Danny and a load of pros that I know. They just jump on Zwift and just do some racing. It's just fun, engaging, and it'll certainly get you fit. So just looking at courses, and then this is something we've got from Jordan Rapp again at Zwift, and he's saying they've got some new courses with summit finishes, so that makes weight a massive premium compared to what it used to be on the flatter Zwift races. With the big climbs, the up the Zwift, and the specific after-party routes, as he calls them, that have kind of long, flat sections, and then finish up a climb. But also, we talked about the drafting and the algorithm tweaks. Zwift are also rethinking courses for racing, and this is an area where they think there's a lot more they can do with the existing topography and longer term, combining the tweaks to the physics of the game to create something really, really unique. And this is not an idea that they're taking seriously at the moment, but these are kind of the ideas that are floating around. Kind of a race where the steeper the road gets, the more aerodynamics come into play. So completely flipping kind of the reality on its head. It's just kind of really, really thinking outside the box. Because I think things like double draft, there's been a massive impact to the way riders climb and kind of the performance on climbs. You do have riders slingshotting their way up from the back of the group, for example. And it's I think it's really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons really, and Zwift thinking outside the box. I think there's a lot more in the space of courses, power-ups, bonuses that are going to come. They're not only going to switch up your ordinary Zwift riding, but Zwift racing. There's going to be a massive impact. Just going to talk on bikes in game on Zwift and kit selection. First off, what bike do you ride on Zwift, and what would be your chosen bike for a race on Zwift?
Well, I'll have to be brutally honest with you. The highest, the most prestigious event win on my Palmares was when I actually unlocked the Tron bike. It took me that blooming long to get that bike, so I don't ride anything but the Tron bike because I had to climb 50,000 meters to get it. And the funny thing was, though, I didn't even know you actually had to press the button and join this task. I just thought you had to, once you clocked over 50,000 meters, I thought, the Tron bike turns up. So I got to about 30,000, and I was thinking, what's this button up here? And I had a nosy on screen, and it's like, do you want to join the Tron bike challenge? I'm like, you're kidding me. I've done about 30,000 meters for nothing. I was so I just used the Tron bike. That's it. I refused to ride anything else.
So, Greg, what level were you on when you got the Tron bike, 50,000 meters climbed?
I can't remember, mate. I honestly can't remember. I was just doing, because it was when I was pro, and I was in Colorado, and it was just bucketing snow, so there was no point in going out. One of my biggest rides, it was 7 hours on there, and I did 6,000 meters of climbing.
Jeez.
So I was just doing these big long days. I was honestly just doing hill reps. I was like, right, I'm just doing hill reps until I get this blooming Tron bike. And forgot to press the button.
You did 6,000 meters of climbing indoors.
Correct. 7 hours.
That's got to be a record. Surely no one's beaten that. I know guys have done 7 hours of riding, but not 6,000 meters of climbing.
Yeah, but I mean, there's guys that do that 24-hour stuff. And there's guys there was Everesting. I put my name down to do Everesting. You can actually you do 8,990 meters of climbing.
You're almost there.
So, and that takes 30. Yeah, I know. I realised that. I was like, I didn't have far to go. Should have just but to be fair, I was pretty cooked.
Thing is, Greg, is that 6,000 meters of climbing day? Is it on Zwift? Is it on Strava? Because if it's not on Strava, mate, it doesn't count.
Oh, true.
I want to see the file.
But isn't it connected? I haven't even. It'll be on Strava somewhere for sure. I took a photo of it too, just to show my teammates how nuts I was if they didn't already know.
Just to prove it.
Yeah.
So you've got you're the Tron bike, Greg. What's your bike go-to bike, Kev?
Well, I haven't quite got the Tron bike. That's why I was asking what level Greg was, because I'm just about to crack level 25 and I still haven't got the Tron bike, so I mustn't be climbing anywhere near enough, obviously. So I might have to change the way I ride indoors. But my go-to bike at the moment is a red Trek Madone indoors, and that seems to do the job.
Lovely. Well, I've just gone on. I've got a Trek Madone as well, actually. But I've actually just gone on the Zwift Insider website as we've been talking to check out. Just Googled fastest bikes on Zwift. Number one is the Tron bike, so you've probably got the best. But number two is the Cervelo S5. Number three is the Trek Madone, so that's me and you, Kev. 4 is the Canyon Aero Road, and 5 is the Zwift Aero Bike. And the Zwift Aero Bike, you actually unlock that at level 13. So I think that's a quick bike that you can unlock pretty early in your Zwift career. And the rest of the bikes, you all need to be level 20 or above. So that's that's where it gets you kind of in the serious Zwifter realms. So if you're relatively new to Zwift, once you get to level 13, Zwift Aero is the fastest. And then you've got a choice then. Obviously the go-to bike, if you've got it, is the Tron bike.
And this is where it's also fun, because we can play with equipment depending on the course we're racing on. As I've just said, if you're on a predominantly flat course, put the deep dish wheels in. If you're going to finish on a climb, put the lighter wheels in, or change the helmet. And all this does have a real effect on your performance. So yeah, it just makes it as realistic as it can be indoors. It's just great fun.
It's pretty cool that they've got like you even get an aerodynamic advantage from the laser bullet helmet. It's a heavy helmet, so it's going to weigh you down a little bit uphill, but on a flat course, more aerodynamic. It's actually just that little bit faster. They just tweak that algorithm just to make you go just a little bit faster when you've got the aero helmet on. It's pretty cool.
God, that is cool. I didn't quite realise helmets made a difference in game. That is attention to detail.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. I wonder if like next thing in the week bringing out a skin suit and like the aero socks and things like that. It's like they could go any direction with the clothing, and I'm sure further down the track you'll have thousands of options of what you want to wear.
Now, Matt, got a question for you. From our last podcast, who was the first professional rider to wear a skin suit to victory in a race?
I can picture him now, a really real weird-looking rider. I remember seeing the picture, I just can't remember who it was. Oh, really weird. Really weird.
Well done, Greg, for setting the trend.
Just Google it.
Was it you, Greg?
I'm a trendsetter, mate. I'm a trendsetter. Yep, very proud of it, actually. I actually felt like I said in the last podcast, I felt a little bit like embarrassed almost, like, oh, what are they going to think of me? Because it was so not French. I remember even when we started, there was a couple of Frenchies on the team, and they just refused to wear it. Like, they're not wearing a skin suit in the peloton. And then it was, look, now there's not one person that doesn't. Even Sebastian Chevanel was wearing a skin suit. I remember we had those FDJ skin suits with the big white bum. We're like, mate, you shouldn't be in a skin suit. Size of a house.
Brilliant. So just going to move on then and talk about different courses and kind of maybe some chat about tactics. So my favourite course is the small volcano loop. And I like it because mentally it's very, very small circuit, quite like criterium racing. But mainly because just before the finish, about 600-700 meters to go, there's a little kicker as you come up into the volcano, and that provides opportunity to either screw it up and go too early on that kicker, not get a gap, and then you're doomed, or the opportunity to kind of ride on the coattails of other riders who are being fairly aggressive, make that front group, and then kind of launch your attack. So I think that. Coming into the volcano, on one side, you've got a little kicker, and then it's pretty undulating then through the volcano. I think that it's not hilly, but it's not deadpan flat. So I think that kind of mix of terrain, is really, really exciting to race on. And yes, if you're familiar with that course and you know where I'm talking about, if your power up is a feather on the last lap, unless you've got a real powerful sprint, you've got to be using that feather on that kicker and trying to force a split on that little rise, and you've almost got to go full gas, I would say. But then once you're in that volcano, then on the final lap, you've probably got 500 meters to go. You've got to kind of wait maybe 100 meters or so. Then you've really got to be opening up your sprint, because there's always someone who's probably been dropped on that little kicker that's kind of making their way back, and they're going to kind of slingshot past you. So just an example of where tactics can be where the terrain really opens up and changes the kind of the range of tactics that you can deploy. But that small volcano loop is my personal favourite, and that's actually where I've got my best result in a Zwift race on. I was second, so never won. But it was kind of like 3 a.m, Europe time, so everyone was in bed, real small field, and that's my chance. I snuck a second.
Nice result, Matt.
What, you got up at 3 to do a session to sneak a result?
No, exactly. I chose a real quiet time. Yeah, set my alarm. I chose the quietest time, least competitive time. Desperate times.
Hey, Rowie, you've got a problem, mate.
What was it? Alcohol on the last one, and then getting up at 3 a.m. to race on this one.
Crikey. Here we go. I think we might have a podcast special by the end of it, and it should be list 10 of Rowie's major problems.
Well done, Matt. A win's a win, or a place is a place in this case.
Oh, he was first loser, absolutely. Mate. He wasn't a win, was it? His first loser. Let's be honest.
Well, have you won one then, Greg?
Yeah, I've won quite a few of them, actually, yeah.
Oh, I knew you'd say that.
Only the flat ones, though, I'll be honest. Hey, I've got a funny story about that. I did the race in Innsbruck, And it was this lap, and it was the first time I'd done it, so because Innsbruck had just come out. And I held on like anything. You do a reverse of the main lap. So I held on like anything up the reverse of the climb on the circuit. So it's a long climb, and I just made it down to 3 guys, and I was like, and I saw the distance, and I thought, okay, so that's going to be 7k downhill, and 3. So it must only be. It said 10k's to the finish. So I was thinking, okay, 7k downhill, and that must be 3k or 4k on the flat to the finish. Perfect. So I started attacking everything out of them on the downhill and like getting a gap, and they'd catch me and getting a gap, and then I'd just come into that roundabout and I hit them again as hard as I could, thinking I was going to turn right and head into town. They just went straight ahead at the roundabout. We had to do another lap of this hill. I just absolutely blew to pieces, and mate, it was like, I think it might have been a DNF. Demoralising. So just be careful of where the circuit goes. I can give you a little red hot tip there. It's it's 2 laps, meaning you finish on the top of the reverse course in Innsbruck. So just be careful.
Okay, well, I think talking about Zwift racing, there's kind of a website that's kind of the mecca for Zwift racing.
Yeah, well, here we can find everything you want to know about everyone that's ever had a race on Zwift. All their results, average power, their 5-minute power, 1-minute power, 15-second power. I think you can look at their watts per kilograms, work out their weight. Everything you want to know about any race is available online at Zwift Power.
And this is a website where you have to register you register yourself. If you've registered yourself, then you can actually compete and get results in specific events. If you're not registered, then there's races where you can still race, no question, but if you haven't got a heart rate monitor on and you haven't got your power on, or you're not registered, you won't actually finish on the results board. You know, you may finish second in the race, which is a great effort, Matt. But if you're not part of, then it won't actually get notched up on the board.
Dagger to the heart, there, Greg. Dagger to the heart. But I think kind of recommend you all, if you're into your Zwift racing or you fancy starting. It's a one-off exercise. Just go on to Zwift Power, register, put all your details in. And then just get stuck in, and there's going to be that library then of all your race results that you can go and browse and check out, and it just helps validate that everyone's kind of racing fair basically.
Who knows? It might get you a pro contract somewhere down the line. I mean, that's what the Zwift Academy is all about, isn't it? The young fellas that they register themselves and they come out with the goods on Zwift. It's a great opportunity for younger riders.
Well, we said it at the opening of the podcast that it's the way forward, and it certainly is the future of racing in many ways. This esports, you can see there's going to be massive events where the big riders come in from the professional teams. People can come and watch them in the grandstands instead of seeing them fly past in a few seconds. You can watch them race for an hour. And it really is just entertainment, and that's what it's going to provide. And it's a great way to see a bike race up close.
I think you're going to have that specialised rider too. Like it's when it really develops and when it really becomes a thing. You're going to get these big, powerful bike riders that really only have to race for 45 minutes to an hour. They don't have to do 6 hours. So it'll be interesting. If someone is really super specialised at that sort of event, and then racing against the likes of of Cavendish and a Steve Cummings or whoever, like some of the pros, Chris Froome. It'll be great to see like someone he's got obviously some power for an hour, but that's it. It'd be great to see them give them a little bit of a touch up in the races. It'd be good to see.
Definitely the future. Watch this space. And again, you mentioned there, Greg, about a big strong rider who can just produce the power. Zwift racing does lend itself to the more powerful rider who doesn't need to make those constant accelerations maybe out of bends like you do in the real world. So if you struggle with all those constant surges, Zwift racing is definitely a place that you can potentially shine. I think there's generally fewer attacks to chase on Zwift as opposed to real life. Racers are learning that it's hard to pull off a solo breakaway, especially with this double draft mode now. You probably tend not to quite see as many attacks, and then if you look at your power profile, it's typically fairly big effort towards the start, fairly big effort towards the end, with spikes and surges in the middle, but generally it's kind of just sub threshold for a pretty long period of time. And if you look at looking again at the power profile, there's kind of less. I think there's less variability because there's fewer attacks. The group's overall effort stays a bit more consistent, and it's just probably slightly easier to sit in the group, especially with this double draft coming in. So I think it kind of opens the net, kind of brings more riders into the fray. And as you say, it's great fun, a great spectacle as well. And I think Zwift Community Live is probably the best place to check this stuff out if you want to have a little look and watch and kind of try before you buy. Check out Zwift Community Live's Facebook page. There's a load of videos on there run by the guys there who do a fantastic job in showcasing, broadcasting Zwift racing. So check it out. Okay, I think that wraps up our chat on Zwift racing. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of questions that fall off the back of this. So if there are, fire them in to Greg Keverai on Twitter, or you can post the question on one of the Zwift Facebook pages. I'm sure it will get our attention. So moving on to cycling terminology. Greg, you're on the button, mate. You're going to have 30 seconds. Kev, you got the clock ready on him?
I do have the clock ready.
Cool. All right then, Greg. You've got 30 seconds to describe the term bridging.
Bridging. Okay, so that's when we've let a break establish, and you're pinpointing a time and place to actually make yourself distance the peloton and get across to the breakaway that's in front of you. It can be done in the beginning of a race where the gap may still be short and you can sprint across, and that's called bridging across. Or it can be done on a climb where you have your team set a pace and you know that it's maybe a minute to the breakaway.
Oh, that's time, Greg.
And then you accelerate at the bottom of the
30
climb.
30 seconds, mate. That's all you got.
And bridge across.
Bridge across.
Why don't you just say closing a gap?
Did. There's two ways of doing it.
Could have done it in 2 seconds, mate.
Yeah,
That was an easy one, but good job.
Good
I was just trying to explain the intricacies of it.
Bridging a gap, and I guess that's where physically it's bridging a gap. You got to do it quickly, right? It's not something you want to dilly and dally over. You don't kind of like time trial your way across. Generally, it's if it's a fairly short gap. It's boom, big effort, get across there as quick as possible.
That's what I was kind of trying to get out in 30 seconds. But yeah, it's like if it's short enough in the beginning, you can sprint across. And then if it's on a climb, I've seen them do it quite often. They'll attack at the bottom of the climb, go across to the breakaway. And then, by the top of the climb, they've dropped the breakaway and they're away and win the stage. So there's two ways of doing it. It typically happen.
All right, guys, quick fire question. So the question is riding with no arm warmers but with leg warmers on acceptable?
Yes.
No way.
I'm saying no way. No way.
Why would you do that, Greg?
So I'm saying no way. It's a slight caveat here. I would never, ever say it's acceptable to kind of go out the door dressed like that. If you're going up a big climb and suddenly you get getting really hot, rolling your arm warmers down, obviously that's practical, that's easy to do while riding. Obviously taking the leg warmers off isn't. So I guess going up a climb may just call it acceptable, but when you get to the top, you've got to pull over at the first point you can and quickly kind of reassess and get yourself looking respectable.
Yeah, but in that case, you've rolled the arm warmers down, so people still know you had them on to begin with, so that's not too bad. But if you go out the door without the arm warmers on at all, then that's a faux pas, that one.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, God. They're just ashamed to be as good looking as you guys when you rock out the door. They have your hair done with gel and makeup on, lipstick.
We discuss all the hot topics here, don't we?
Just imagine you guys.
It's got standards, mate. We've got standards.
Standards. I mean, seriously. If you've got arm warmers on or not, what happens if I don't own some arm warmers? What if I'm not as privileged as you privileged children over in the UK and Australia? We can't afford arm warmers. Do I put plastic bags on my arms? What do I do there?
Mate, sell your leg warmers. Sell your leg warmers and go buy a pair of arm warmers.
Mate, I don't want to sell my leg warmers. I like my legs to sweat, because if they don't sweat, they feel all bloated and blocked for the race. So I need the legs to sweat. That's actually typically one of the areas that doesn't sweat that much. So, I mean, there's just all sorts of scientific reasons why you'd want to keep your legs warm and not worry about your little muppet
Don't
arms.
bring science into this one. Come on, it's just fashion.
No, yeah, don't bring science. I was once told, don't sacrifice style for speed. End of.
Oh, God.
There we go.
If you
All
can't
right,
be
guys,
the best, you got to look the best.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's the thing, Greg. When I got second in that Zwift race, I was looking good while getting second.
Hey, you have won a Zwift race. What are you talking about? You won the Coaches Championships at the World Championships.
Coaches World Championships.
True. Coaching world champ.
You're the
good
Coaching
point.
World Champ, mate. Put that
Good
on the
point.
Palmares quick sticks.
Yeah, a
Hang on,
bit too
it's
modest.
the E-Coaching World
Yeah, I
Championship.
suppose.
Yeah, e-coaching world champs. Cool. All right, swiftly moving on. Hear what I've done then? Swiftly moving on. We've got a couple of questions. We've got 4 questions today. First question is from George Mahalo, who lives in Hawaii. And George sent this in on email. And the question reads, I'm 71 years old and still compete in 20k time trials between February and April in Hawaii. I'm having a difficult time finding information about what off-season weekly base riding I should be accomplishing. I don't compete in long bike races, only time trials. I know how to ramp up just before the race season, but off-season, not so sure. If you could try answer my question or point me in the right direction, I would be most appreciative. So 71-year-old George, who does 20k time trials for a few months, February to April in Hawaii. How should he be best approaching the off-season? Good question.
Wow. First of all, tip of the cap for getting out there and still smashing around on time trials at 71 years of age. Good on you. I'm
Absolutely.
mightily impressed. But you've got to take the event as it is. It's a 20k effort, so let's say 30 minutes. So it's going to be there's going to be a very large aerobic component to this exercise. There's going to be anaerobic parts, but there is going to be a large aerobic component. So if you then take your training back into the off season, it would be safe to say that you couldn't go wrong with just some nice actual tempo stuff, some of the rides that really put you in a low energy state, which then synthesizes that mitochondria that we always talk about, the all important mitochondria in the muscle cells. You start doing a lot of training that really improves and really increases that mitochondrial biogenesis, and that's some of the best training that you can do. It's consistent training. It's 20k time trial. I'm presuming there's not all those surges and accelerations like there would be in a race or a criterium and things like that. So you can get away with a lot of tempo stuff, a lot of steady state stuff, controlled by heart rate or controlled by power. And if you can get on the bike, I'm sure the weather's good all year round. I just had a quick look, February to April, you've got an average temperature there of 25 degrees Celsius. So you've got beautiful temperature to race in, and I just looked at the rest of the year and it's 25 or hotter. So, weather's not a problem. So if you can get out 3 times a week and do some of these things, it just all depends on how many days a week you can put aside for training and how many hours. But like we've said in previous podcasts, you only need to do 3 or 4 rides a week, 1 to 2 hours, and you can actually maintain a really high level of fitness.
Yeah, my thoughts with this question were pretty similar. For me, the key point is to not have much structure in your training during the off season. So keep up the consistency in your training. So if you did ride 5 times a week during your peak racing season, try to ride 5 times a week during your off season. Obviously, the training is a lot less intense, but in terms of some intensity, a good session to do is just to increase the pace, like you're surging or crossing a gap or bridging, as you spoke about before, until your breathing rate becomes a bit higher and you just get that shortness of breath. Could be 30 seconds, could be 1 minute, and then full recovery again, and just increase the pace again a bit later on until breathing rate increases again until it's a little bit of oxygen debt, and then recovery again. So just by having a little bit of intensity without going deep, as Greg mentioned, activates all that mitochondrial biogenesis, keeps the aerobic system in check as well. And as we spoke about with this podcast, for a bit of intensity, do a race on Zwift once a week as part of your off-season training as well. Stay in touch with some high-end intensity, but without the structure, and do a Zwift race. So if you can keep the consistency in your training, a little bit of short, unstructured intensity, and a Zwift race once a week, there's a pretty good off-season for you.
Yep, agree with all that. And at 71 years of age, just try and keep fit. If you just keep up walking, just stay active, swimming, especially in the off season. Whatever floats your boat. Just try and stay a fit person, so you don't hit the start of the season ridiculously out of shape, and it's a massive uphill struggle to get back to where you want to be. Okay, guys, hopefully that helps George, and good luck with your 20k time trials. Question 2 is from Lloyd Golby, that was sent in via Facebook, and Lloyd's question reads: I've recently profiled myself using Dr. Andy Coggin's power profiling chart and come out as a second cat for peak power and 1 minute, whilst I am a cat 3 and cat 4 for 5 minute and threshold. I'm not sure whether I am a naturally stacked full of fast twitch muscle fibers, or whether it is the fact that before cycling I lived in the gym doing whole body weightlifting, but I'm good at the shorter stuff. This is great, but my goal is group rides and 100-mile sportifs, so something needs to change. Am I naturally destined to struggle, and what do you advise?
Well, I'd say from his information there, he probably is leaning towards the naturally fast twitch fibre athlete, and that's good. Everyone's got their strengths, but it doesn't mean that he can't improve his aerobic capacity, his VO2 component as well. So as we've spoken about in previous podcasts, there are ways to, in some ways, decrease your sprint and increase your VO2 as well. So there's still gains to be made, but if that's what your power profile is suggesting, then it would indicate that you are naturally a fast twitch fibre rider.
I was just wondering, Kev, because he's spent, he's quoting, I've kind of lived in the gym, doing whole body weightlifting. All that time spent weightlifting, that's really, again, we don't know what weights and the like, but he's going to be doing a lot of explosive, movements you'd think in the gym, becoming super, super strong, which is going to lend itself to firing those fast twitch fibers. I do wonder how much of that has been, he's kind of trained himself, trained his body that way. So I guess if he does start doing cutting the gym out, or significantly cutting it back, and start doing some longer rides, I wonder how he will balance out over time. And it'd just be interesting to maybe in 6 months, reprofile yourself and see whether you do balance out significantly, or whether as we think you may just be naturally that fast twitch fiber predominant athlete.
Oh, look, definitely if he's looking to make gains in his aerobic capacity in that VO2 area, the gym work is definitely detrimental to that. So the first thing would be to cut that gym work out there. Obviously what he's been doing over the years is enhancing his fast twitch capacity. You don't really change the components there, but what you do is enhance their ability to produce lactate and produce power. So he's obviously trained himself to a very high level of fitness in that area. So if he wants to increase the VO2 area, maybe step out of the gym for a while and quite simply get out on the road and start repeating those long threshold tempo style efforts with good recovery.
It's pretty interesting because I know quite a bit about that profiling chart, and it's on Training Peaks there. And I remember chatting with Dirk Friel about how it categorises you, professional, world class, and then Cat 1, 2, and 3. And the ones that I really struggled with were, even though I was a sprinter, was the peak power and the 5 second and the 1 minute power. It was like a 1 minute I was just starting to hit the right levels basically. And I asked him, I said, how are these, I think to be world class was nearly 30 watts per kilo. And in actual fact, what they've done is they've taken track sprinters and put their data in the profiling. So that's why it's really, and so the fact that he's actually higher in the hardest ones to get, it means he must be very, very strong and powerful rider. So I think just so much hypertrophy from the gym. He's just so much strength. It's like you said, Matt. When you're strong and you can put it in the 5311 and just stand on it, that it doesn't necessarily mean you're actually turning the cranks over that quick. It's just strength could actually be playing a major factor in why he has high peak power and high 1 minute power. You got to remember though, endurance training, like Kev said, is if he gets out there and he starts doing his, that steady state stuff, those sub threshold workouts, longer efforts. Endurance training is catabolic, meaning it will actually eat away at your muscle fibers, and you will lose weight, like muscle weight, not just fat. So it's there will be a level out area, where he's done so much endurance training, and it'll make such a difference to his overall riding. So that 100-mile race that he's lining up to do, he'll have no problem doing that. He's got the power. It's actually something you don't even need to look at and work on anymore. All you need to do now is start with those steady tempo efforts and slowly build up that functional threshold power, so that when you go and race the 100-mile sportive, you've got no problems going over the climbs and staying within your limits, and you'll get to the finish no problems, mate.
This power profiling stuff, sorry there, Matt, this power profiling, it's interesting in a way, because I don't know, it's not something I've really looked at that much in the past with riders, but as we were speaking about it then, I jumped on my Training Peaks here in front of me and looked at a certain rider that for 5 seconds is hitting 1960 watts for 5 seconds, and then on...
Are you looking at mine again, are you, mate?
I didn't want to give the name away, but on the power profile, they're just scraping into domestic pro. So, yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it, to be honest.
What I always say is don't read too much into where you fell on that scale, but it is great to kind of profile you now versus you in 6 months or in a year's time, just to see your personal trend over time. Yeah. I think what we're saying here, Lloyd, is good news. You're not doomed. You're not destined to struggle, as per your question. Just get out, start doing the long, steady stuff. All the sub-threshold, the tempo stuff, and you can go on Zwift, and in the workout library, there's a whole plethora of sessions based around tempo riding and time trial sessions. Just get stuck into, sign up to one of those training programs. And I'm sure first off you're gonna destroy and smash your goal. These 100-mile rides and group rides, you'll suddenly see an increase in your performance. But it would be interesting, just you go away and just profile yourself in 6 months time, to profile yourself and just see how your profile changes. And I'm sure you will see a shift, and I'm sure you will see kind of a benefit to your cycling in the real world. There we go. So that's question number 2 from Lloyd. Question number 3 was sent in from Dale via Facebook. And the question reads, I have just finished my hill climb season where I performed better than in previous years in terms of results. And he's quoted, I don't have a power meter, so can't be sure on changes in power. The events I compete in are between 1 minute and 15-minute climbs. I have focused on developing my lactic capacity. Is this the right approach? I'm also interested to hear about what's happening in my body during these efforts. Well,
it's quite a big range there between 1 minute and 15 minutes, but basically we're looking at very high aerobic efforts here. Even though he's focusing on his lactic capacity, these really are high VO2 efforts. In terms of what's happening to his body there during the efforts, firstly, he's burning a massive amount of carbohydrates. So let's say, for example, if it was the 15-minute climb, at that sort of intensity for an hour, he would be burning around between 300 and 400 grams of carbs. So he's going to be burning between, say, 80 and 100 grams of carbs in a 15-minute climb there. So fueling is very important for this kind of effort there as well. And also because of the fuel that's used for this effort, we need to train for that part of it as well. So there's obviously lots happening there, and it's quite a range of duration, of intensity, but it definitely is a high VO2 aerobic effort.
Yeah, the key takeaway for me there is, the fact that you commented on it there is a huge difference between the kind of the physical attributes and the kind of the type of rider you want to be to perform in a 1 minute event versus a 15-minute event. If you think about a 1 minute event, that's like the kilo on the track. That's your Chris Hoyes and your pure track sprint. They kind of do well those type of events. Whereas the other end of the scale, 15-minute climbs, that's kind of a short time trial. Very, very different. So I guess there's no kind of one size fits all to training for the hill climb season as a whole. There's not kind of one attribute you really want to home in on. It depends kind of hill to hill. But certainly, kind of your lactic capacity is very important. Then kind of your threshold and other aspects are gonna lend themselves well to the longer 15-minute climbs. And kind of on that spectrum, basically looking at your power profile, you basically want to nudge up the power you can produce across all those different durations. It's going to be a whole mix of sessions. And just on about the fuel, so we're talking about carbs is going to be a huge energy source. So an energy gel is going to be a good idea, kind of 20 minutes before the longer 15-minute climbs, Kev?
You wouldn't need an energy gel in this case because you've got enough carbs stored in the muscles for this sort of duration of effort anyway. But what we want to do is train the body to burn it. So what I would suggest in training is doing some efforts where you're building up a high amount of lactate. So looking at the effort, this is going to be the kind of effort where you're going to hit your maximal lactate capacity. So your maximal amount of millimoles of lactate in the bloodstream. So to replicate that in training or to train that system, we want to do efforts of like 3 to 5 minutes, almost full gas to build up a high amount of lactate, and then do sort of steady state efforts after that. So within 5 minutes, you're going to build up to, let's say, 8 to 10 millimoles of lactate. And then once you've got it up nice and high, and then try and do an almost threshold effort after that, or a steady state sub-threshold effort over about between 5 and 10 minutes. So the key point here is to build up a large amount of lactate first and then produce a long effort after that.
Is this your over one session? Is that kind of...
Actually, I would look at
broadly what
that
you're describing
lactate
here?
shuttling session that we did a while ago, where it's got that really hard effort to begin with,
Okay.
build lactate up, and then basically you're shuttling above and below it. And that way, if you didn't do the opening hard effort first, you would only be shuttling a low amount of lactate. But if you do that initial hard effort for 3 to 5 minutes, full gas at the start, and then go above and below the threshold, you're going to be able to maintain a high level of lactate for a long period of time, and that's how you're going to train for this kind of event.
Well, Greg, we all know you don't do hill climbs, mate, so we let you comment on the next question. Question 4. Chloe Westnat sent this question in via Facebook. So Chloe, thank you for the question. And the question reads, I was born in South Africa, but now live in the UK. For Christmas and the New Year, I'm going back to South Africa, where it will be up around 35 Celsius, 95 Fahrenheit, which will be a shock from the 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit in the UK. I'm planning on riding with my family and old friends while back in South Africa, but I've struggled a lot in the previous years with this change in temperature overnight. Any advice?
Yeah, I like this question because I've had a lot of it myself with the extreme temperatures. And a lot of the research now says there is a lot of validity in actually doing some heat adaptation, whether it's just in a sauna or a hot bath. And, after 6 or 7 days, you actually get a very, very substantial gain in blood plasma volume. I think there's a lot of validity in doing some kind of heat adaptation before you go. It actually only takes about 6 or 7 days of a 30 to 40 minute sauna or bath, hot bath, and this actually starts triggering a expansion in your blood plasma volume. It gives you a larger range of your core temperature, where it will lower your core temperature in a higher temperature degrees. Like when you go back to South Africa where it's 35, you'll actually have a slightly lower core temperature, so that gives you a range of core before failure. It's just becomes that slight bit larger. And just when it comes to core temperature, the very, very small changes make a huge difference. And like we may only be talking half a degree or even 0.3 of a degree in your resting core temperature, but the actual difference that gives you on the top end of your what you can sustain at temperature wise is really, really quite significant. So I would suggest, and I've been in the same situation myself, where I go from a very cold environment to a hot one. I just know it takes, if I don't get a chance to adapt previously, acclimate, you have to do it over there, and it takes a good 6 or 7 days. But if you do get the chance, I really recommend 30 minutes in the sauna, or 30 minutes to 40 minutes on a hot bath, and it just really helps with heat acclimatization. It really helps with blood plasma, blood volume expansion.
It's interesting the point you made there about a small difference in your core body temperature as a big impact. So 37 degrees is our normal body temperature. When you've got kind of a fever, it might go up to 38 degrees, or kind of a real high fever, 39 degrees. That's only 2 degrees difference. It's not massive,
no.
But yeah, it's a kind of it has a huge impact.
Marathon runners are the guys that have the highest core temperature, and they the Olympic ones, and they only get up to only, but it's 41, and that's about the top end of what a human can function at. So the only thing you can do with heat, this is why it's one of the major concerns with all sports scientists when they go to a hot environment, is because the only way that you can cool your core down during combat is actually slow down or stop. You can't, once it's gone up there, pouring waters over your head, and you can't actually take on the substrate to cool yourself down. The only way of doing it is stopping. So that's why they're putting so much research and so much time into heat chambers and heat training, and plus the benefits of heat training. Once you get a expansion in your plasma volume, I mean, that does everything. It increases cardiac output, stroke volume. It just does everything for you. So it's one of those definitely training attributes that it ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, just on that, throw in water on your head. On the coast ride that us three done with Zwift, was that one day it was ridiculously hot, well in the 40 Celsius range, and literally we were grabbing bottles of water and chucking them on our head. But all that done, and to your point, Greg, is short term give us kind of like a 3 or 4 minute cooling period where we felt cooler, but deep down, obviously in our core, was still boiling hot. So
absolutely,
as you're saying, there's not a great deal you can do other than kind of stop and get in a cooler temperature.
That was so that's one of the trade-offs that they warn you about, is don't put ice on your head for long periods of time, because what happens then is you send a signal to your brain that says, oh, I'm actually cool. So one of your mechanisms to cool yourself is send a lot of blood flow to your extremities, and a lot of sweating, obviously. So if your brain then says, oh, I'm cool, then you'll limit the blood flow to your extremities to offload heat, and you'll actually decrease the amount of sweating. So then you're actually in a worse situation again, because you're actually not doing what you need to do to try and cool yourself down naturally. You're actually slowing down that process, and then your core temperature heats up even higher and even quicker, faster. So yeah, it feels good at the time to put a hat of ice on, and I could go back to Craig Barrett, our New Zealand walker at Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, and he was actually winning the race by a mile, and he was putting ice on his hat on his head, and he just went delirious. He passed out with about 5Ks to go, had a huge lead, and he just didn't know where he was for about an hour or so afterwards. He was just absolutely gone, because he'd been sticking ice and his body hadn't been thermoregulating like it should be. And down he went.
Well, there we have it, guys. That's episode 21 on Zwift racing. Hopefully you've enjoyed, and there's some kind of tricks and tips that you can deploy to your own Zwift racing. And if you haven't had a go, recommend it highly. Greg, Kev, good to chat, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with the person that finished second in the Zwift race. It's been an honour, and Kev, I'm sure you feel the same way, but it's just been fantastic to be on board with Matt Rowe.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I've got to say, it's an absolute pleasure to be chatting with the person that first wore a skin suit to a victory in a professional road race. So congratulations, Greg.
And the only man I know to have fallen off an erg. Full stop. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.